For drivers, the opportunity to race in Formula One is a rare thing. Seize it, and you could make history. The story of how Michael Schumacher got his break for Eddie Jordan after one of his regular drivers had been arrested is well known. But you might not know that Jordan also asked another driver to race his car, and his name was Bernd Schneider.
Eddie called me and I did not say immediately, yes, I'm gonna do it. I was not brave enough. I just had not the confidence to get it together. And I was so much with my eyes in Spa and watched Michael and said what he achieved. Maybe I could have done it as well. So a really disappointed moment in my life.
Schneider lost the chance to return to F1 in a competitive car. Schumacher grabbed his moment and went on to become a 7-time world champion. Imagine how different things could have been for Bernd, whose own F1 career was short-lived. As it was, he raced touring cars and sports cars for Mercedes, and he was one of the senior drivers at Le Mans in 1999 when a series of crashes took place that could so nearly have led to the Silver Arrows stopping racing altogether.
Thanks God that nobody was injured there, because otherwise this would be part of my responsibility, because I was pushing hard that we are driving that race. One of the most lucky days of Mercedes motorsports, because if something happened bad, we wouldn't have Lewis Hamilton in a Mercedes car, 100%.
Hello and welcome to F1 Beyond the Grid with me, Tom Clarkson. Bernd Schneider is an example of someone we see almost every season. A talented driver who didn't achieve what he could have done in Formula One. In touring cars, he was a legend. They called him Mr. DTM for his 5 German touring car titles. He has the most victories, the most podiums, and the most pole positions in the series history. He was fast in pretty much every competition he raced in. So why did he fail to make an impression in Formula One? Bernd raced in the late 1980s when not every car that turned up for a race weekend qualified for the Grand Prix. Racing for Zakspeed and very briefly for Arrows, Schneider entered 34 races across 3 seasons, but he only qualified for 9 of them and never scored a championship point. Reflecting fondly on his life during and after Formula One, Bernd tells me about the chaos of pre-qualifying, how shockingly bad car reliability was back then compared to today, and that remarkable offer he received from Eddie Jordan to return to F1. We also discuss Bernd's memories of being teammates with F1 icons Mika Hakkinen, Webber and Jean Alesi, and how his decision-making could have completely altered the history of Formula One as we know it today. Bernd is a racing legend and a real character with some riveting tales to share. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Bernd, it's great to have you on the show. How are things?
Things are very good so far. I mean, I just turned up 60. It looks a bad number. I feel a little bit.
You don't look 60, Bernd.
Thank you for that. But anyway, it's hard to achieve that one. But otherwise, I'm very happy I'm still here. So I had a great time behind me. So I really appreciate it. I'm still in a good shape and I still can drive some cars on the racetrack. So it's a good life.
We don't often see you at Grand Prix these days. What's brought you to Monza?
The last couple of years, I did the Pirelli hot laps for Mercedes. In the last year, I was supposed to do Las Vegas, but I couldn't. I was already in holiday. This I really missed because Las Vegas, I guess, was a good race. But this year, I did Monza again. I did last year and the year before. It's a nice atmosphere, and I love to come to Italy to see the Formula One here.
What car were you doing the hot laps in?
We have the GTR Pro, and it's a nice car. We're running the Pirelli tires, of course. We have the Pirelli hot laps, but not the semi-slick tires, standard tires. And it's always surprising me how good the cars are. And of course, we impress our guests because, you know, when you are in the paddock lounge and you just up over the pits and you see the cars driving, looks slow, but when they're sitting next to you, they have a little feeling about the speed.
But I want to know, what lap times do you think you're doing in the Merc? 1988 in the Zakspeed, your quali lap here was a 1 minute 30. How far off that do you think you were?
I have no clue because it's start-finish because we make driver change and then we go into the first corner. But this car,
so it's a standing
it's
start.
not it's not a full lap. So we just start from start-finish and end. But in case the car is around about 10, 12 seconds slower than the GT3 car, so it must be around 2 minutes something.
Sounds really good fun. Now, you won in pretty much every car you raced, and you dominated in touring cars. So is it a source of frustration that you never got a proper crack at Formula One?
Of course, you know, I had my last Formula One race with Footwood Arrows in 1990 in Jerez, and I crashed the car because I was so much under pressure because I replaced Alex Caffey, and I thought, okay, if I qualified well, my teammate was Michele Alboreto. Maybe this gives me a chance to coming back in Formula One for a full season. And I was pushing too hard on Friday qualifying and crashed the car. And from that moment on, I didn't know, okay, this is the end of my Formula One career. And this was really disappointing. But I had a chance with Eddie Jordan to come back in 1991, but I was a bit scared to sign the contract because he asked for so much money. And he asked for not only money for driving the car, also he wanted to have a management contract. So, and I was a bit scared to sign this because otherwise I still would owe him some money, I guess.
Look, we'll come on to that because I know there's a story there. But, you know, you were blindingly quick in the junior formulas. You won the 1987 German Formula 3 Championship, winning all but one race that year. Why wasn't that enough to propel you into a front-running Formula 1 seat in 1988, much like Kimi Antonelli and Mercedes today?
Yeah, I must say, of course, in Germany it was a special situation. You know, Stefan Bellof passed away, killed in Spa, Manfred Winkelhock. So the Germans were really suffering with motorsports in that moment because this was our two guys in Formula One. So they was really looking forward to get a new one. And when I dominated the F3 International German Championship, everybody expecting me in the Formula One. I had the chance. I was in Donington and Marlboro made... I was looking for young drivers, and I was one of the Germans, and I got the offer to do Formula 3000 in '88. But at the same time, I got the offer to do Formula 1 for Zakspeed, and of course, I was convinced it's not a good car. But if you are, I was convinced myself I can be fast in that car. Maybe not winning, but at least qualifying well and have some good results. But it was absolutely different. You know, if you're coming in that car with so much problems in a team who's struggling a lot and you are a young driver, no experience, this was very difficult.
There are so many sliding doors moments in a driver's career. Do you think that was the moment for you? Had you done a fully funded F3000 campaign in '88, maybe won the championship, things could have been different?
Yeah, you know, Stefan Modena won in '87 the championship with Onyx team, I guess the name was. And Mike Earl won the team, was very, very famous, was the best team ever in F3000. But in the year after, they were really struggling because they won the wrong car, so they was not able to winning the championship. Volker Weidler took my seat over because when I said no, I get in Formula One, they took Volker, and they were nowhere there. So that means I don't know it would be the better choice being with Onyx, but I think a little bit better opportunity because you're on the English side. You know, if you're in Germany, you're just connected to the Germans motorsports families, and that is not included in Formula One, especially in that day. So we had no contact to anyone to negotiate something driving for any other Formula One team.
Tell us about the opportunity with Zakspeed. How did it come about?
I mean, this was a very small team, and Zakspeed in Germany was quite famous for all the success they had in the years before in touring cars, sports cars. So, and they were convinced to do Formula One, but between touring cars, sports cars, and Formula One, it's a big, big difference. It was a very small team. The budget was small, but they made a quite good job for such a small team. But then the turbo engine, the areas finished in '88, and we were running this 4-cylinder engine. We were really struggling, and we had not, I think, the cleverness, you know. We found out in the end of the season how we can cheat in a way it's legal. But Tweak, okay, that's the right word. But it was much too late, and we were so much under pressure for the year after. But Erich Sarkowski took Gustav Brunner. He was a famous designer, came from Ferrari. He built a very nice car. If you see the Zack Speed, even today, you would say it's one of the most pretty cars ever in Formula One. But we got the Yamaha engine, and this Yamaha engine was absolutely nightmare. We were convinced, okay, Honda was so well in Formula One. Now Yamaha, the next Japanese company, jumping in. We got them under our side, and now we are really maybe front runners. But our first test, 3-day testing, Vallelunga, I did 3 laps. 2.5 we pushed, and a half lap I dove. This was the preparation for Rio de Janeiro, our first race. We had another 1-week test in Rio, or 5 days. We killed 17 engines. So 17 engines.
What was it? Was it the same problem with the engine every time?
No, it was always different problems. This was what, if you have one problem, you can solve it out. But this was so many problems. And the Yamaha people, they hide so much because we had good engine engineers, because Zaxby did the engines before by itself. We even couldn't look to the engines. But after 2 days, they ran out of engines. They didn't have so many. So they complete the engine there was damaged and made a new one. And in the end, we had one left, and I qualified with that one for the race. So, but yeah, it was a really nightmare.
Look, at that time in '89, you were having to pre-qualify. A lot of people listening to this won't even know what pre-qualifying was. Can you just describe to us what happened?
This was, I think, the most pressure a racing driver can have, or a team, is pre-qualifying. Because we, imagine it was 37 cars on the grid for Formula One, but there are only 30 allowed to drive on track and 26 allowed to drive in the race. So there's that 26 are the best cars are qualified for qualifying, points-wise. Every half season, they changed. The best 10, 12 cars are qualified, and the others goes in pre-qualifying. So we had 13 or 14 cars in pre-qualifying, and only 4 cars went into
the official session.
The official session.
Yeah. When did it take place? It was early doors.
It was Friday morning from 8 to 9 o'clock.
Oh
if you're not qualified, you had to leave the paddock at 12, except the drivers and the team owner, and we could keep the sponsors. But all the others, the mechanics have to pack everything together, the trucks, everything have to leave at 12.
So for you to be on track at 8, what time were you getting out of bed?
Depending a little bit in which Grand Prix it has been. Monaco, we were quite close, so it was not too early. But normally we start at 5 o'clock. Being in the car, they have to warm up the car, last engineers meeting strategy, because you had 2 sets of qualifiers. You can choose 2 set qualifiers or 1 set race tires and 1 set qualifiers. Tracks I know very, very well, like Hockenheim or Mexico, because Mexico was one of my favorite tracks. I choose 2 sets of qualifiers. But then you have only 2 laps. So because the quali tire valid for 1 lap.
So much pressure, and as you and the track would have been really dirty because, of course, the weekend hasn't started yet. The official weekend.
The track was green, and you had no simulator before. So, and it's not like today. All the drivers went into the simulator for 2 or 3 days. They're getting here when they're jumping in the car. They know the track, everything directly. Then see the braking points and know exactly what to do. But I haven't been there for 1 year. The track was dirty and green, I would say. And then, you have 2 laps or 3 laps.
And the car wasn't good, as you say. Unreliability. I think you failed to pre-qualify for all but 2 races. Is that right?
In '89, I only qualified for 2 races. The first one in Rio de Janeiro. Was a bit lucky to qualify there, and mid-season I said to Mr. Tarkowski, the team owner, I want to stop. I don't want to drive anymore because
that was going to be my next question. At what point do you go, this is not good for my career?
Immediately, when I saw that with Yamaha we couldn't make any improvements, because these guys, we had meetings today, we laugh about that, we was talking Gustav Brunner and Tarkowski, our engineers, and this Japanese boss of Yamaha said, yes. And then he said, you understand? No. And then we start the whole conversation again. And after, I would say, 6, 7 races, we had a translator in our team that we are 100%, and then we did wrote down everything and send it to Japan, that the bosses did know what's going on. And then we got a small changes, because I was in Silverstone, I never will forget that. This was the point I said, I have to stop. Because I was there, you know, in that days, Nigel Mansell, Senna, Prost, Alesi. I went on straight in the fast part of Silverstone. I was the chicane. I was the moving chicane, because I even came in not in 6 gear. I did 250 and they're 330. I feel like driving with Formula 3 in a Formula 1 practice. I mean, I came into the box and, we have to change the trumpets. I said, no, you don't need to change the trumpets. You forgot to put 2 pistons in the car, in this engine. Yeah, and then we put that engine in the dyno, and it's 450 horsepower. I mean, a normal Ford Cosworth engine in that days was 590, 600. So, and that was the moment I said, I don't drive anymore. And then Mr. Tsakowski said, okay, we take now the engine, put it on the dyno, and Norbert Greyer, he was the engine engineer from Saxpeed, and he took care. And then from that moment on, it's going much, much better, and the reliability was better. But for example, it's a good story. I was in Japan, qualified for the race, because Norbert made the engine. We were so proud, 21 on the grid. I never have done any start before, never. And then said, okay, go end of pit lane, try to do a start. I made the start, drive shaft broke. I said, oh shit, what are we going to do now? I took my seat, running back, and we had the spare car, and I get in Aguri Suzuki's car, or actually the spare. I went in, and Tsakowski said, listen, don't do any start. Go right, very be careful to the grid, because when we are not starting the grid, I don't get starting money. I need to get the starting money. So I went to the grid. I never have done any start in that car before, and then we did the start. I was really a bit scared that the drive shaft broke again, but the car was okay. So I did the start and I did a few laps, but then the gearbox after 20 laps was over, because we never have done so many laps in a row.
Bernd, it's a completely different era of Formula One. When you look at the reliability that we have today, there are races where every single car finishes today.
Yeah, it's absolutely. You know, I was in Phoenix. We had the city race there, and in 1989, only 5 cars finished. Then Christian Danner went in points. So
yeah, because he finished fourth.
Yeah, fourth, and because 5 cars finished only. Yeah. This was quite normal. Yeah, and if you see how close the cars today, you know, you see 12 cars in 1 second. I mean, with my Saxpeed in Monaco, I remember I was 7 seconds slower than Ayrton Senna. And yeah, of course, I was not qualified.
Prost was 1.5 seconds.
Yeah, okay, then I was a different world in Monaco, 100%. But anyway, do you see there was a big difference in the cars in that days. But yeah, it was very difficult. But the most difficult moments for me was definitely the pre-qualifying on 89.
This episode is sponsored by Shopify. You know, when you look at brands like Alo and Allbirds, you see massive success, great products, stunning branding, and brilliant marketing. But there's an often overlooked force driving that success, the business behind the business. And for millions of companies, that secret weapon is Shopify. Shopify isn't just another platform, it's the gold standard for selling. It powers the #1 checkout experience on the planet, making every sale smoother, faster, and easier for both the business and the buyer. And with ShopPay, it can boost conversions by up to 50%. That's not just fewer abandoned carts, that's turning maybe later into buy now faster than ever. If you're serious about scaling up, your commerce platform must be able to meet your customers wherever they are. Whether they're scrolling through their social feeds, shopping on your website, or popping by your store, Shopify helps you sell wherever they're buying. The secret's out. Businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/beyondthegrid, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/beyondthegrid to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/beyondthegrid. It's interesting that you mentioned start money at Suzuka because 89 was Zach Speed's last year in Formula One. Was it obvious to you that the team was going to end at the end of the season? Were you getting lots of vibes from mid-season onwards?
Of course, because, we had West as a sponsor. They quit the contract mid-season. And from that moment on, I was sure they cannot run the car in 90. And I said to Mr. Tsarkovsky, end of season, I don't want to drive anymore for you because I don't see you driving. He said, no, I will get sponsors. Don't worry, you got a contract. You have to be with me. At the same time, I negotiated already with Mercedes to drive for Sauber in 90 because I thought if Sauber doing well with Mercedes, maybe they're coming in Formula One and there's another chance for me to get in because I didn't see much chances for English teams because I was not connected to them. And I had already the contract. And then Mr. Tsarkovsky phoned Mr. Neerpasch, said, listen, this guy is under contract, you can get him.
Oh my goodness, hang on. So Zach Speed stopped you driving for Mercedes in sports cars. And look at what happened to Schumacher, to Wendlinger, to
Yeah, and this was the reason they found the junior team. Mr. Neerpasch was always a big friend of junior teams. He did it with BMW and he wants to have it there. But first of all, he tried Jochen Maas and Bernd Schneider as a German team to win the championship because he has Schlesser, Baldi as an international team and they were world champion. And then they said, okay, we have a German team. They are maybe also fighting for the championship. But then it's not happened. And then they found, okay, we do a junior team. Or Mr. Meyer said, okay, we take now my junior team, Wendlinger, Frenz and Schumacher. And in March, Zach Speed quit Formula One. And then I was there with nothing.
Goodness. So, Bernd, this is another sliding doors moment. We've talked about maybe the F3000 thing, but also because Zach Speed wouldn't release you, you couldn't join the Mercedes sports car team, and who knows what could have happened after that.
100%. This was me. I was really, I don't know, I was really pissed off with Erich Tsarkovsky. I said, hey, come on, how can you do this? You kill me. You kill my career. You kill everything I achieved so far. No, but he was convinced to do it, and he had a partner, and he was responsible for the budgets. And he wrote a letter to Bernie, we cannot drive because we have no budget. And Tsarkovsky even didn't know. But anyway, I guess there was money for 2 races, 3 races, other than he would finish it. Anyway, so this was the reason I said, I can't believe that the team will run and I will leave the team. But I had a contract. I had a 5 years contract and they didn't let me out.
Well, I guess now is the moment for you to tell us the story about Jordan in 1991 because, okay, so the Mercedes thing hasn't happened. You're now out of a drive because Zach Speed have left at the end of 89. So how did the Jordan opportunity get presented?
I mean, Eddie is one, for me, of the cleverest guy in pit lane, and he thought if he get a German driver, there's a lot of sponsoring in this country.
I think him and Bernie were both thinking we need...
Bernie was so open to me, when I talked to him, even when I did Formula One, he came up to me, he was talking to me, and I was always surprised that he take care about myself. And but the next one was Eddie. He said, hey, come to the UK, I show you my factory, I show you everything we have done. We are ready for 1991.
Did you race against Jordan in Formula 3? So
No.
had Eddie seen just how quick you were in Formula 3?
He saw me in Formula 3, but I not raced in the UK. I raced German Championship, but I did the European Championship in Silverstone. And I did also Macau. I finished third in Macau.
Okay, so
I was
EJ had seen firsthand what he was...
And he was convinced because he followed all my career. And I mean, he was very clever. He knows what he was talking about. And of course, he gives you also a good feeling. He said, come on, I want to have you because you are good. All the other people I was talking to, they said, how much money you have. That doesn't matter how good you are. It's just depending on the money you're driving or not. But with Eddie, it was different. Of course, he wants to have the money. But on the other hand, he said, I think you're good. I'm convinced we can achieve something special. And this gives me personally a good feeling. But I was in his workshop and he showed me like hell in a good way, I never heard words like that before. My English was not like today. But I said, Eddie, I cannot sign this contract. I mean, I wrote a little bit in it because it was 2 contracts. One for driving Formula One was $5 million I have to pay. And the other side was with him personally as a management contract. I have it still at home and while for 10 years.
The management contract
Management
for 10
contract,
years.
10 years. So that means
Can I ask what percentage EJ was on, or is that confidential?
it was only 20%, but he also said in there, if I don't can pay him, I can pay back in the next years. So that means
For the rest of your life.
exactly. If I own him $2 or $3 million, if I don't get Lewis Hamilton, I have to pay him back the rest of my career. So all the money I made would be now Eddie's. And I was really scared to sign it. I was alone. This was another issue. I mean, if I would have maybe a good manager next to me and he could talk in a better way to him like I did, probably I would take it. But he took Andrea de Cesaris because he had a $5 million budget from McLaren, and with Bertrand Gachon and he had a young driver with Andrea, experienced driver, so it was quite good for him. Bad for me. So I signed a contract with Jules Porsche and I raced in IMSA. It was a great time. I did love the Porsche to drive. The 962.
Is that the Porsche 962?
Yeah, 962. And in the US, racing is something different than in Europe. So because, we were not the favorites, the Jag, Nissan, Toyotas, this was all manufacturers. But sometimes I was in pole position in Watkins Glen, and we had some good results. But, even if I was fifth or sixth, the crowd was standing in front of our tent and said, oh, look, what a hero, what a guy. And there came up photos, autographs, and they really appreciate the racing we did.
You were a hero driving those Porsches because they had a lot of grunt and not too much grip, isn't it?
No, the grip was fine, but the thing is, the car was good to drive, high grip, good downforce, good power, but no safety. It's aluminium chassis. It's not a carbon fiber chassis, so you should not have any crash in that
Well,
car.
and you just, a little bit earlier, you was talking about Stefan Beloff and Manfred Winkelhock, who'd tragically lost their lives in... So just to be clear, you don't get the Mercedes sports car drive, Michael Schumacher does. You don't get the Jordan drive, Michael Schumacher does, a little bit later in the year, of course.
Yeah, but there's another story about that.
Spa?
Yeah.
Okay,
because
there's another Jordan story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jordan called me. Hey, Bernd, you can drive Spa, $300,000. And I was already in the plane to the US because I had two double races in the US. And he said, you have to come back and you can drive it, but you have to pay $300,000. I made the same offer to Schumacher. The one who pays first, get the drive. Mercedes guaranteed the money to him. It was not Willy Weber. He made the deal, but Mercedes said, okay, if you're not finding the money, we're going to pay for it. Sauber, actually. Unfortunately, I was not so unhappy because I was a bit scared. If I'm not performing well in the Jordan in Spa, maybe I'm out of everything because then I could not do the race in the IMSA with Porsche. And then maybe I lose the drive there. And if I'm not performing well like Michael did, I have also no cockpit afterwards. So I was a bit scared, and this was the reason I answered him a few days later, and then Schumacher was already confirmed.
And the great irony in all this is that you are now so closely associated to Mercedes, the people who actually paid for
but
Schumacher's
that's
drive.
the next thing. Oh. Michael did DTM in that days. Nobody knows. Michael replaced a French driver, and he did 4 DTM races with Zackspeed Mercedes in that days. So then Michael signed the contract for Benetton, and he could not drive any more DTM. Mr. Howe called me, said, hey, can you replace Michael in DTM for the last 4 races? And then, because I was contracted to Porsche and to Ford, I asked them, can I get the permission to drive for Mercedes? They said, yeah, it's no problem. You can do the last 4 races in DTM. I did pretty well. I came back to Zackspeed again, Mr. Tarkovsky. And I did quite well. And Mr. Hauck said, you have to stay with us. And I don't let you go. I don't let you drive the Porsche again. Because he was a close friend to Manfred Winkelhock. And he said, I don't want that you get hurt or something happens, you got wife, and don't do this anymore. And then he pronounced me in Hockenheim last race, Bernd Schneider going to drive for Mercedes. I even had a contract.
And the rest, as they say, is history. You go on to, to dominate so much with Mercedes. But just sort of last question about your career in Formula One is, are you at peace with what happened or what didn't happen in Formula One? Because personally, I look at you and go, I think if you'd been in that Jordan at Spa in 91, we knew at that stage it was a very good car. I would have put money on you being faster than De Cesaris. And so I think it could have had a very different outcome.
I was really disappointed, especially when Eddie called me and I did not say immediately, yes, I'm going to do it. I was not brave enough. I just had not the confidence to get it together. And I was in the US. I had a good race. I finished on the podium, but I was so much with my eyes in Spa and watched Michael and said, fuck, what he achieved. Maybe I could have done it as well. And I could have a good entry back in Formula One. But then I said, okay, now it's just over. I don't want to look back anymore. I have to look forward and I have to make the best out of that, what's going to happen in the future without Formula One. But this was a really disappointed moment in my life.
I think that there are some great German racing teams. Zaxby didn't succeed in Formula One, but they were a great racing team in touring cars. Jost, they've had amazing success in sports cars. Why, in your opinion, do you think no German teams have succeeded in Formula One? German-based teams?
We have to compare the old times and the new times. The old times, the problem was that all the good engineers, the good mechanics, they are very constructors, they all have been in the UK because they have a long, old history. And it's not so easy to get these people into Germany. We have a few mechanics and engineers, English ones, but they wants to go back to the UK. So there's just a number of time they stay with us. Okay, very seldom they stay a bit longer, but it's not so easy to get them to Europe or to our continent. And I think this was very hard to get experience out of Formula One, from the UK into us, our team. With Zakspeed, we tried everything to get some good engineers, but nobody wants to come to Germany. You always prefer to stay in the UK. Today, it's the problem with the rules we have in Germany. They are so complicated. You're limited by working
hours and things.
Yeah, working hours. So the mechanics wouldn't. If you said we have to we have to prepare the car for the race, now we day and night work. Doesn't work in Germany. It's not allowed. So we have so strictly rules that we cannot run a Formula One team or a racing team. And the teams we have for GT or whatever, so they're mostly these mechanics are not employee, so they're freelancer, and then they can do what they want. But if you do a Formula One team, you cannot have freelancer because then they're disappearing during the season or wherever. So this is very, very difficult for the Germans to have a Formula One team.
Can I just ask you a little bit about your life post-Formula One? Because you go on to dominate touring cars, as I've said, and sports cars. And you raced against and were paired with many F1 stars. And I'd like to ask you about a couple, one of which is Mark Webber. And last night I was actually telling Mark that you and I were going to have a chat. And he said that, he said you were a legend. And he also said that he learned more from you on his way up the ladder than any other driver. How do you look back on the time when you and Mark were teammates in the FIA GT Championship?
Mark was a little bit like my kid. He came to Germany, and of course in Germany you're quite lucky. Most of the people speaks English, but anyway, you feel a little bit as a foreigner because you are a foreigner in the country. And I tried to give him when he stayed in Germany. He stayed in my house. We made everything together. We trained a lot. We drove together to the racetracks. Of course, we were teammates. And I said, Mark, if we want to beat our teammates, was Zonta Ludwig, we have to be strong. So it's not important that I doing qualifying and put the car in pole. We as a team have to be strong. So I tried to teach him a lot. And he was always a really, really nice guy to me. And we had such a good relationship that it was a pleasure to support him. And he had so much motivation, to not only doing sports cars. He always had a dream still coming in Formula One. And I told him sometimes, hey, listen, it's a hard way, if you leave Mercedes, getting in Formula 3000 maybe is the last year for you. But he said he doesn't care. He wants to get in Formula One, and he put everything on one card, and he made it. When he left Mercedes, I was really sad because was a good colleague, was a nice teammate, and I think we could together achieved a lot also in DTM. But he chose the way to go in Formula 3000, and he made a big improvement, and he was so quick in F3000 and Formula One. What he achieved is outstanding. But for me, I will never forget the time that we had together in the car and also outside of the car.
Le Mans 1999. People listening to this, go onto YouTube, just type in Mark Webber, Le Mans 1999, and you're going to see some scary footage of Mark flipping the car. Then, of course, the other car driven by Peter Dumbreck flips as well. You as the senior guy at Mercedes at the time, what are your memories of that? Were you scared of driving that car? I just love to get your memories of that whole weekend.
We didn't know the problems with flipping the cars because a lot of cars, other manufacturers flipped already, and we are also, our CLK GTR was always a little bit in the air, but this was also the reason we not did run at Le Mans in 1997. But the 1998 car was already not a big issue. We never had any things with flipping, that the front went light, so I was in pole position in 1998, and the car was really good. We just had a technical issue on the engine after 2 hours. In 1999, we made another big step forward, and Mark and myself, we have been in Hockenheim, the old track. We were running them without the chicanes. We did more than 330 kilometers over the bumps and everything, and very close in slipstreaming to simulate what's going to happen. And I'm just very happy that nothing happens, because in that old track, we have the trees right and left. And if something happened there with 300, then I don't want to be in the car. But we never had any issue there. And then we came to Le Mans. We had a little issue with the power. We have to push the power, turn the power down. The reliability was not there anymore, so we had to drive less power. And we had to take off the downforce. The downforce we were normally running, we took off as less as was possible.
To compensate for less power.
To compensate that we still getting the top speed. And we didn't imagine that this in fact the lifting of the car that much. And I don't know if Mark told you, but the worst accident was not on TV. Mark had that one on Thursday. The car was already prepared for the race, and he was driving just shakedown and did a few consistency laps to see how the car goes over the race distance. And he followed Frank Bieler in the Audi. The Audi was pretty slow in that time. And Bieler told me that he could see Mark coming. And after the kink, he stayed on the left and said, okay, will pass me now. But there was no more Mark. And he was so scared because he said, where is he? Where is he going? Because he watched all the mirrors he had in the car, and he said, there was no Mark. And Mark told me that when he took off there, he could see the tree from top. So, I mean, these trees are really, really high. And he did a completely flip and landed on the back and was standing on all four tires on the road. And I passed the car, and I said, oh, technical issue, even so any damage. And and we didn't have any cameras in the car, so we cannot see what's happened. But I guess this was the highest fly ever, and was not on TV. But we did not mention, because we didn't see it. You know, Mark said, hey, I flipped the car, and this happened, and I did nothing wrong. And he said, yeah, he flipped the car. But of course we saw that must be something, but you know,
was Mark visibly shaken by that when he got back to the pits? What do you remember of that?
You know, I remember when he came back, he was pretty white in the face, and he was really scared because, but you know, in that moment, we all did not really recognize what happened. And
so at this point, are you still happy to get back in the car?
I was 100% convinced the car is good. I had no issue, never. I drove so close to all the others, I never had anything. So, and then also the whole team said, okay, there must be a problem in the car with the setup, that we were too low and the front was too high, and when you're on the slipstream, no, we will prepare the car like we did in all the simulation tests, shouldn't be an issue. Then they built a new car for Mark, and he flipped it again in the warm-up. And this was on TV. And everybody said, oh, what's wrong there? Did they found some footage from the old one? But wasn't, so it was another flip. And then Mr. Hauck said, we stop. I don't drive at Le Mans if the cars are flipping, because with the history he had, this can be killed the whole motorsport program of Mercedes-Benz if somebody was really injured. And I said to him, Norbert, no, I want to drive. The car is good. And then Gerhard Anger, our engineer and the guy who built the car, said, okay, we put the rain setup on it. I mean, downforce, so much more downforce, front and rear. Then the car is safe. And then we really convinced him to let us drive. And that was the reason we drove the car. And when Peter flipped into the forest, I just went out of the car, was in the container, changed, and then Franck Lagrange was my teammate. He came into the container and said, Schneider, he flipped into the forest. He flew into the forest. I said, who the fuck flew into the forest? Peter flew in the forest. But he's okay. And I was so happy that he told me that he's okay, because I even had no idea what's happened. But then I went immediately down to the box and I saw the pictures. I mean, this was really shocked. And I was really, thanks God, that he survived that and nobody was injured there, because otherwise it would be part of my responsibility, because I was pushing hard that we are driving that race. This I always say to people in Mercedes, this was one of the most lucky days of Mercedes motorsports, because if that something happened bad, we wouldn't have Lewis Hamilton in a Mercedes car, 100%.
This episode is sponsored by Indeed. We all want to find the best, whether it's in life or business, but when it comes to hiring, the smartest move isn't spending hours searching for the right candidate, it's about matching with them. And that's where Indeed comes in. With more than 350 million global visitors every month, Indeed is your go-to platform for finding quality candidates quicker and easier than ever. According to a recent survey, 93% of employers say that Indeed delivers better quality matches than other job sites. And the best part, you can say goodbye to the busy work of hiring, because Indeed does the heavy lifting for you. From scheduling to screening and messaging candidates, everything happens in one place. Just imagine what a difference that can make to your workload. Plus, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use it, the better it gets. Whether you're running a small business or a large corporation, Indeed has your back. Join the 3.5 million businesses worldwide who trust Indeed to hire top talent fast. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/grid. Just go to Indeed.com/grid right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/grid. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Another guy I wanted to ask you about didn't actually make it to Formula One. He had a hugely successful career in the US, winning the Indy 500 3 times. Dario Franchitti is that man. He flirted with Formula One, he tested a Jaguar, he did some tests with McLaren, of course, a Mercedes man for a lot of his career. Do you think Dario was good enough to succeed in Formula One?
100%. My first grey hair are from Dario. He is
Because he was so quick.
He was so quick, unbelievably quick, and such a nice guy. I must say, it's Mark and Dario are the two I really did love. Immediately they're coming into the team, and said this was great relationship, and we had so much fun. And with it's also not so easy for English speaker coming in a German team. Of course, we tried to speak quite all the meetings, everything is in English, but then we start talking German, and it's not so easy. And with Dario, it was the first time we had really English speakers. Was Magnus and Franchitti, and we had some engineers English, so was quite a lot of English. But anyway, it's a lot of conversation in German, and then they're just sitting there and they say, sorry, and no, don't mind. And we had, and they still had fun, when we talked in the jokes or we tried to translate them. It was just awesome. And with Dario was unbelievable, because he just went in the car and he was quick as I am. And everybody expected
And he was very young at the time.
Yeah, he was very young, and Jan Magnussen, when he came in the team, he won the F3 British Formula 3, and he beat Senna's record. So everybody expect him. Magnussen is the guy to beat. But this was not. Then we came to the first DTM race at Hockenheim, and Dario was on pole. He beat me by 1/10 or less than a tenth, but anyway, he beat me. And Mr. Aufrecht came already, Schneider, now you're getting old. But this was, this was the way he challenged me, I challenged him, but always in a good way. We never had any fight in the team. Even, of course, I want to beat him. I have to beat him, As a racing driver, you want to be first all the time. But with Dario, when he beat me, I could live with that because I did know I'm a good racing driver, but I also know if somebody get everything together in the same car and I'm not, then they can beat me. And Dario was the guy who said, okay, I have big respect. And I told everyone in that days, if he get the chance to do Formula One or something else, you will see how good he is. And I'm very happy that he left to the US because otherwise I wouldn't have won 5 titles because he was so strong. But we went quite often to see him when he drove IndyCar. I was a bit scared because IndyCar is so dangerous. But we visited him a few times, and I was a little bit proud to have him next to me for such a long time and to see how good he has been. And now, from that moment on, when he won Indy and he won the Indy 500, everybody knows, okay, Schneider made a good job in DTM because he beat him in 1995.
Schneider was a great teacher, I think. It would have been fascinating to see what Dario could have done in a Grand Prix.
100%. In 1995, we tested the McLaren. I was champion. Dario was best newcomer and was so quick. He said, okay, you have a test in the McLaren. And David Coulthard did his first test for McLaren in Jerez, and he was there already for 2 days. And we got the old car, Nigel Menzeldorf, with this wing on top. And
not the best looking racing car.
No, not the best looking racing car, but for me it was anyway very happy to drive. Was pedal shift, first time in my life in a Formula One car. And Magnussen was test driver in that days for that car. And he said, that's a shitbox. But I went in the car and they made a seat for me. I was sitting in the car. I never have sit that good in a Formula One car like the McLaren people did for me. I went in the workshop, different styles of steering wheels. The seat was carbon fiber, the padding, everything what they did was awesome. I said, hey, I got just 20 laps. They said, no, if you get in the car, you have to be comfortable, and was outstanding. So, and then we were in Autosport Award, and in the morning at 6 o'clock, we flew with Ron Dennis' plane to Jerez, and I was first, and Dario in the afternoon, and I think end of lunch, I had another new set tire, and I was 2/10 of Coulthard's time. And he was already in a newer spec car, what Magnussen told us. And Dario was maybe 1/10 slower than me. So and he was first time in a Formula One car ever. And I haven't been in a Formula One car for 3 years. So that means, the potential was absolutely there. And if Dario would jump in that car, 100% he will fight for the championship.
Couple of other teammates. You had Mika Hakkinen, I think it was 2005 as a teammate, and then Jean Alesi was driving for Mercedes as well. What are your memories of being teamed with Mika in particular?
2 completely different characters, For me, Jean Alesi is one of the biggest talent ever on this planet. The issue with him is, because the car control he has is outstanding, but he's not the worker, He is not the guy who's sitting with the engineers and fighting and looking at getting a better car. If the car is good, very difficult to beat. If the car is bad, he will not improve it, so he stays bad the whole weekend for him.
Do you think he had that attitude in Formula One, Jean? Do you think that's just him?
Yeah, but no, there are a few drivers I think like this, but Jean definitely, from talent-wise, was one of the biggest talent. I think maybe he had not the right guy to guide him through a team. We tried in Mercedes to help him as much as we can, because it would be good to have Alesi as a DTM winner, and he won a few races, and he could win even one more. He let me buy in a Red Bull ring to win the championship or fight for the championship. Otherwise, he would have won that race as well. But anyway, to win a championship is hard for him, because when he struggle, he get mad and then struggle even more. And Mika Hakkinen was completely different character. So he is really analyzing everything, and he was so much focused because he had the target to win this championship. He want to have it, win it. So he tried everything to win this bloody championship, DTM championship once, and he was really focused for it. And I saw him working, and it was really good, and he had the chance to win it in 2007, I think. Was just a bit unlucky. Otherwise, he had the possibility. He is a real champion.
Oh, but look, so many wonderful stories from you. I did want to ask you about being king of the ring. Now, for people who don't know what I mean, I'm talking about the Nürburgring Nordschleife. You grew up not far from there, didn't you? How many laps have you done of that wonderful circuit?
Yeah, I have done quite a lot, but not in racing. You know, when I did the 24-hour Nürburgring in 1986, I think, first time as a Ford Junior driver. Frank Bieler, Manuel Reuter, and myself. And we drove to Cologne, picking up a car from Ford, driving to the ring, and we did every day, 20, 30 laps. Because in the old days, there was no simulator. So you had to drive to learn the track, and it's a 20-kilometer track. It's not so easy to remember all the corners. In that days, we said you have to do at least 100 laps to know where you are on track. And this is what we did just in the road car. But when I came to Mercedes in 1992 for a full season, they not allowed me to drive any other car, any other brand. So, and Mercedes did not take part on the 24-hour Nürburgring. So I could not drive anymore the 24-hour, even I would love to do it. And I started again with the SLS when we started this customer racing. And in 2012 and 13, I won the race. So I was very happy that I could finish and also win at least now 2 times the 24-hour Nürburgring.
Legendary track. And
100%.
Wonderful to speak to you. Just before we go, I'd like to end in our traditional way, which is some quick fire questions. First one, what else are you good at?
You know, I like very much golfing. I'm not a good player because I have not enough time to play, but I really today appreciate playing, have nice rounds on the golf course. I like biking still a lot. And I also really appreciate good food and something nice to drink. Because we have missed that in my career.
The joys of retirement. Look, next one. Which racing person, dead or alive, would you want to be stuck in a lift with?
You know, I was so lucky that I met all the legends in my career. You know, I met Sterling Moss because he was with Mercedes a long time. I met Manfred von Brauchitsch, first silver aero winner at Nürburgring 1934. I met Hans Hermann. Juan Manuel Fangio was with us in a DTM race. I met Ayrton Senna. He came to me in Suzuka when I had an accident and said, "How are you?" And I was so surprised that he even know me. For me, Ayrton was the most focused racing driver I ever saw. For me, being a little bit like he was, is a dream. Yeah. Ayrton is one of the guys I really has the most respect.
Next one, who would play you in a film?
Because I'm so good looking. Brad Pitt.
Well, of course.
100%. Brad Pitt can do it.
There are some great racing movies out there, actually. Do you have a favorite? I mean, Grand Prix.
Yeah,
did you enjoy Rush, the Senna, the Lauda Hunt movie?
Yeah, I saw all the movies. I still, one of my favorites is Grand Prix 66. I love this movie. It shows a little bit the sadness, and that days was a dangerous time. Of course, if you see, for me, if I see Nicky's film, I did know Nicky very well. He has been with Mercedes a long time. James was driving a DTM car. He tested at Nürburgring. I was there, and I was so much impressed, you know, how he treated the car, how relaxed he was in the car, and how he made it. It was just a test, but yeah, I know the guys, and then if you see the film, it's something special how they made it.
Next one, who is the coolest person in your contacts?
Probably Kimi Räikkönen.
But look, final one. If you hosted a podcast like this, who would be your first guest?
So I really would invite Michael Schumacher. You know, we have so many things together. We spend also a lot of time, but there's still a lot of questions I would like to ask him. So if I would have the chance, I would have him in the podcast.
Bernd, pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What a fascinating discussion. Bernd is a huge character and a very respected voice in German motorsport. I hope this chat shed some light on how close he came to potential success in Formula One. What if he'd taken that Jordan drive? And his description of Le Mans in 1999 gave me chills. Bernd, many thanks for your time. I loved catching up with you, and I hope to see you at a racetrack again soon. As ever, please let me know your thoughts through all the usual means. I'm at Tom Clarkson F1, or you can use the hashtag F1 Beyond the Grid. Which brings me on to what you sent in about last week's show with Jolyon Palmer. Many of you really enjoyed hearing his story. And this message from Mobile Av summed up much of the mail that was sent in. While his racing career may not have captured the headlines, Palmer has truly found his stride as a TV pundit and commentator. His insightful analysis, engaging style, and deep passion for motorsport have made him a standout in the world of Formula One broadcasting. Hear, hear, and thanks for getting in touch, Mobile Av. Well, that's almost it for this week. Please look out for F1's 2 other podcasts. This week's F1 Nation comes from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix paddock, where I was joined by Oscar Piastri's race engineer Tom Stallard and his mum Nicole after the Aussies' hugely impressive win. And F1's Director of Race Promotion, Louise Young, is on the latest episode of F1 Explains to discuss how races end up on the calendar. Both of those pods are available right here on your podcast app. Well, that's it from me for now. I will, of course, be back next week with another great guest from the world of Formula One. Thanks very much for listening. F1 Beyond the Grid is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios. Until next time, keep it flat out.